powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to another edition of Unconventional Playbook. Please hit that like and subscribe button. The Minnesota Vikings today got down to business. The Minnesota Vikings today got down to business dismantling the Atlanta Falcons 42-21. And here's what I'm most excited about in one of the most important games of the season. When you had time to prepare, the Minnesota Vikings came with it. And not only did the Minnesota Vikings come with it, but Sam Darnold goes for 22 of 28, 347 yards, 5 touchdowns against his predecessor, the guy that came before him, Kirk Cousins, in one of the most important games of the season. Like, this was not a playoff game. This was not a game to go to the Super Bowl. But this game had playoff implications. This game had a lot of emotion attached with it. And this is just one of those games where it's just unspoken. You want to show your opponent up. And that's what Sam Darnold did. Do you think Kirk Cousins came in here and wanted to play a bad game? No. Kirk Cousins, 23 of 37, 344 yards. Goose egg in the touchdown column. 2 interceptions from the Minnesota Vikings. I called it in the preview podcast of this game that I felt like Kirk Cousins was going to throw a couple of interceptions today and give the Vikings a couple of early Christmas presents, and he did. The Minnesota Vikings were absolutely outstanding. This was not one of those one-score wins, single-digit wins. The Minnesota Vikings, all the way through, dominated the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons had their moments. Their first drive of the game was absolutely fantastic. I noticed right away that they were not trying to put the ball in the hands of Kirk Cousins because they ran a lot. Bijan Robinson got a lot of carries, 22 carries today for 92 and a touchdown. This was something that they had not previously done in a lot of their games, rely heavily on the run. And all of a sudden today, it's like the coaching staff really figured out who Kirk Cousins is, and so they tried to establish the running game. Did a pretty good job of that. You know, Minnesota Vikings were number one against the run defensively. I don't know where they lie after this game, but still near the top. Really missed Ivan Pace in this game. But as soon as they had to rely on Kirk Cousins, the Atlanta Falcons fans found out what the Minnesota Vikings fans have known about Kirk Cousins all along. He's a pretty good quarterback. He's going to give you stats like the 344 that he gave you today. But when you need him in big moments, he's going to let you down. He's going to overthink everything. On the opposite side of the field, UP Nation. How good was Sam Darnold, man? I've always said it about these quarterbacks. It's not always about talent. It's not always about arm strength. It's about the brain that is under center. And the one thing that I can say about Sam Darnold is that he ain't scared. He ain't scared at all. Sam Darnold constantly throwing the ball down the field in high-pressure situations, not being afraid to make a play. How great was Sam Darnold today? You can see the byproduct of Sam Darnold's aggressiveness when you look at Jordan Addison, 8 receptions for 133, 3 touchdowns today. Justin Jefferson, 7 receptions for 132 yards, 2 touchdowns today. Finally got a chance to see the gritty. We haven't seen that in about a month and a half. How great were the Minnesota Vikings today? This is just one of those victories where everything just feels good. Like you can just everything. This game was so fun to watch. We Minnesota Vikings fans, Skull Nation, Purple Nation, UP Nation. We don't have a lot of games like this. And to have the Minnesota Vikings be prepped and ready to go when Kirk Cousins come back to town, man, hats off to him. Hats off to him. The offensive line didn't look great to start the game. You know, they were breaking down our interior over the left guard center position in that 3 technique. I mean, they were getting through there, putting a lot of pressure on Sam Darnold. But again, man, where I'm impressed is that Sam Darnold just didn't waver. Who I want to hear from are the Kirk Cousins apologists, the supporter of Kirk Cousins. I remember Kwesi took a lot of heat for not signing Kirk Cousins to a deal here in Minnesota. Where are those people now? I want to hear from you in the comments. What are you thinking now? What are you thinking now about the decision that Kwesi made to not pay the money to Kirk Cousins? Sign Sam Darnold, 1-year contract, $10 million. And Sam Darnold is without a doubt one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league this year. He's playing like one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the league this year. What do you think about the decision now? Because I heard a lot of chirping. I heard a lot of chatter. And rightfully so. If you were a Kirk Cousins fan, he had done some pretty good things here. I can understand the emotions of being upset and maybe having to take a step back. But if you can make those comments then, come on and let me know your thoughts and your comments now. And what do you do if you're an Atlanta Falcons fan? Where do you go from here? You still have a chance. You're still in the hunt for the playoffs. Do you stick with Kirk Cousins? Is he the guy that's going to get it done for you? Are you losing your faith in Cousins? Do you start Michael Penix next game? What do you do? Where do the Atlanta Falcons go from here? The Atlanta Falcons fan base and the Atlanta Falcons are starting to understand the quandary that Minnesota Viking fans have been in for the last 6 years with Kirk Cousins. What do you do? And on the other side of the coin, what do you do if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan? With Sam Darnold, man, oh man, he's making a hard case to stick around. You've been hearing a little bit of chatter of maybe we should sign him to a multi-year deal. And look, I'm going to tell you, I'm not afraid to tell you my opinion. Number one, why are we trying to make a decision today? Like, I think you got to let this thing ride out for the rest of the year and see what the end result is with Sam Darnold under center. But if you made me give you my opinion today, the plan is still the same as far as I'm concerned. I think the plan is to ride it out with Sam Darnold. J.J. McCarthy is our quarterback for next year with Daniel Jones as a possible backup. But I understand people that are all in on Sam Darnold right now because the way he's playing, man, how can you not be? How can you not be? Unbelievable. It was great to see Justin Jefferson get into the end zone this week. It had been about a month and a half before we saw the grid. He caught 2 today. And the effects of trying to take him away, Jordan Addison got loose. And then the second half, we start going to my guy, T.J. Hawkinson, who had a goose egg in the first half. I don't even believe he had any target. But he came to life in the second half. Aaron Jones ran with the purpose today. I was surprised that they went away from him for a little bit, but came back to him towards the end, scored a touchdown at the end of the game. Aaron Jones was solid. I have been really happy with the acquisition of Aaron Jones. Our defense wasn't as solid as it had been in previous weeks. Like, I was surprised that we didn't get to Kirk Cousins as much as I thought we would. We got the one sack today. We got a couple of pressures. We got a couple of deflected balls. But I thought, being that he's coming off that Achilles, man, and he's not that mobile of a quarterback, I thought we had an opportunity to get to him a little bit, but credit to the Atlanta Falcons offensive line. They picked up a lot of those blitzes, and even when we got through the holes, there were like a running back or a tight end waiting for him to pick up a blitz if it got through the offensive line. So hats off to the Atlanta Falcons to protect Kirk Cousins, because I thought we would get through a little bit more, but you knew what was coming. You knew that if you gave Kirk Cousins enough time to drop back and throw the ball in this big of a game, that at some point in time, if you were Atlanta Falcons fans, that he was going to let you down. Minnesota Vikings fans were just waiting for that moment. I know I was. I was sitting back in my recliner and I was saying, at some point in time, Kirk's going to make a mistake. Kirk's going to freeze up. He's going to overthink things. And the Minnesota Vikings were right there waiting for him. 6-7 now, the Atlanta Falcons, spiraling out of control. I don't know what their thoughts are about in terms of them making the playoff, but now they've got to dig themselves out of a heavy hole. The Minnesota Vikings go to 11-2, still sniffing around that number one seed spot that the Detroit Lions hold. They can't seem to lose either. They haven't lost since the first game of the season. And again, I tell you all the time, I believe in law of averages. I believe some losses are coming for the Lions down the stretch. This is a bad time to be losing games, especially with all the winning that you've been doing. And now the injuries for the Detroit Lions is starting to pile up. And I think that's going to affect them in future weeks. And then it comes down to the last game of the season. Boy, that is going to be a barn burner. I'm so pleased with the Minnesota Vikings right now, man. I couldn't wait to watch this game today. It was box office. Again, the 12th man showed up. The Minneapolis fan base was absolutely fantastic today. You couldn't even hear yourself think. You couldn't even hear yourself think in U.S. Bank, in the vault. The Minnesota Vikings were absolutely stout. KOC, again, called a great game today, probably one of his better games in terms of play calling that I've seen him have. My coach of the year, and it's not even close. I saw the candidates that they put up on ESPN, and man, KOC, for my money, it's not even close. My second guy would be Tomlinson. He's having a great year as well. No one thought the Pittsburgh Steelers would be anything again. He hasn't had a losing season in his career, which is really hard to do in the NFL. But KOC is my guy this year for Coach of the Year. Man, this Sam Darnold thing is getting pretty interesting. Sam Darnold didn't only play well, but he threw for 5 touchdowns. The first time in over 20 years a Minnesota Vikings quarterback has thrown for 5 touchdowns. First time in 20 years. Think about that, UP Nation. Think about that, Skull Nation. More than 20 years. A guy that a few months ago was on the scrap heap, quarterbacks, nobody wanted him, didn't know what his future is going to be. And KOC has done a hell of a job with Sam Darnold. Man, lots to digest with this game. This game was absolutely fantastic. King David, shout out to King David from UP Nation. Love your takes on the games, comments. Thanks for letting me know about the technical difficulties. Hopefully we got that fixed. Sometimes stuff happens. But the Minnesota Vikings are having a dream season right now. Could this be the year? We're going to put together a podcast this week and just talk about, is this possibly the year? I've always said when the Minnesota Vikings go to the Super Bowl, it's going to be one of those years that you don't expect for them to go. They're just going to sneak up on you, win the games that they're supposed to win, and go. And I know we have a long ways to go before we're in the Super Bowl or have a chance to play for the Super Bowl, but man, there's just something about this team that is just a little bit special in my eyes. And the Minnesota Vikings are making plays and showing up for big games when they need to show up for big games. And Sam Darnold is not blinking or flinching one bit. He has been absolutely fantastic. Where are the Minnesota Vikings going to go from here? Put them in the comments, UP Nation. Do you want him back on a multi-year deal, UP Nation? Or do you want to stick with the plan and roll with J.J. McCarthy next year, who had a really good stint in the preseason game, but now you got a guy like Sam Darnold who is building his resume with the Minnesota Vikings? What do you do? What do you do? You got J.J., you could build a better team. You got Sam Darnold, he's going to eat up some of that cap. These are things that you got to worry about going into next year. But we're going to talk about him here on Unconventional Playbook. We just had to get on here and just celebrate this victory. Skol. 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 Celebrate this victory. Send Kirk Cousins back to Atlanta. I'm sure the Atlanta Falcons are having a little bit of buyer's remorse, paying all that money for Kirk Cousins, and he's had a terrible 3 weeks, throwing for 0 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. That has been Kirk Cousins' stats over the past few weeks. It's not our problem anymore. It's an Atlanta Falcons problem now. It's going to be interesting to keep an eye on the Atlanta Falcons and see what they do down the stretch, heading in to the end of the season and a possible playoff berth. Please hit that like and subscribe button. This has been Unconventional Playbook. We will make sure to see you when we see you. A Minnesota Vikings victory. Minnesota Vikings 42, the Atlanta Falcons 21. Latre, take us home.
I don't know who I am. Can I say I'm a man? Am I losing my mind? Am I wasting my time? Do I know who I am?